Have you ever been in a situation where you thought things couldn't get any worse? Until they did. Well, today we've got a story that left an entire courtroom speechless. Literally. Imagine you're sitting in court, waiting for a simple traffic fine hearing, and suddenly, what should have been a routine case takes a sharp, unexpected turn. Let's dive into the jaw-dropping moment when a man, caught speeding, thought he could get off with a simple fine, only for his own daughter to drop a bombshell that made everyone in the room gasp. It started like any ordinary day in court. The judge was moving through the docket quickly, case after case. People were there for the usual stuff: speeding tickets, minor violations, nothing too exciting. That is, until one particular case caught everyone's attention. A middle-aged man, we'll call him Mr. Thompson, stood before the judge. He had been pulled over for speeding, and you could see on his face that he was bracing himself for the consequences. His teenage daughter sat quietly beside him, looking a little bored, maybe even a bit nervous, as the judge read out the charge. Mr. Thompson gave a slight nod, admitting he had indeed been going over the speed limit. It seemed pretty cut and dry. You could feel the tension in the room ease a little. This was going to be a quick fine, and everyone expected the judge to wrap it up soon. But that's when things took a wild turn. Out of nowhere, the judge decided to ask Mr. Thompson's daughter a simple question. What do you think about your dad's driving? Now, most people would have expected her to smile politely and say something nice. After all, her dad was standing right there, and this was just a speeding ticket, right? Wrong. Her response was anything but ordinary. Without missing a beat, she blurted out, "Honestly, Dad's much worse than you think." The entire courtroom froze. You could almost hear the collective gasp of everyone sitting there. What did she just say? Mr. Thompson's face flushed instantly, and he shot his daughter a panicked look, clearly not expecting her to spill their beans like that. The judge, too, raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by her sudden outburst. The daughter went on, nervously but determined. She explained that this wasn't just a one-time thing. According to her, her dad had a bit of a habit when it came to reckless driving, speeding, cutting corners, even texting behind the wheel. It was all fair game for him, and she knew it all too well because she'd been in the passenger seat for most of it. The more she talked, the more the courtroom's atmosphere shifted. From casual to shocked, Mr. Thompson tried to cut her off, awkwardly laughing it off and claiming she was just exaggerating, but the damage was done. The judge wasn't laughing. In fact, you could see the wheels turning in his head as he glanced back at the father, who suddenly didn't seem so confident anymore. What was supposed to be a quick fine had now spiraled into something much bigger, and you could feel the tension growing. People in the audience whispered among themselves, shocked by the unexpected turn of events. No one knew what would happen next. The judge was silent, clearly deep in thought, while Mr. Thompson stood there, visibly sweating, unsure of what his punishment might be now that his daughter had thrown him under the bus. Metaphorically speaking, of course. And just when you thought things couldn't get more intense, the judge leaned forward, eyes locked on Mr. Thompson, and asked the one question everyone had on their mind. Is there more we need to know? What will the judge do next? Will Mr. Thompson walk out with just a fine? Or is this about to become something much, much bigger? Stay tuned to find out. As the judge's question hung in the air, the courtroom remained frozen, waiting to see what Mr. Thompson would say next. His daughter's shocking revelation had changed everything, and now, with the judge's piercing gaze on him, it was clear that this wasn't going to be a simple speeding ticket anymore. Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his spot, his face pale. He wasn't expecting his own daughter to speak out like that, especially in front of a judge. He cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. Your Honor, he started, his voice shaky. It's not as bad as it sounds. I may have a heavy foot now and then, but I always make sure we're safe. But the judge wasn't convinced. His eyes flicked back to the daughter, who still sat nervously in her chair. Is that true? He asked her, in a tone that was calm, but firm, like he already knew the answer. She hesitated, glancing at her dad, clearly torn between loyalty and telling the truth. Finally, she sighed and spoke again, her voice quieter this time, but no less honest. No, it's not always safe. He's gotten a lot of warnings before, but he doesn't really slow down. The room went dead silent once again. The look of betrayal on Mr. Thompson's face was undeniable. He had been caught off guard by his own daughter, and now he was trying to figure out how to get out of this mess. The judge leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Mr. Thompson, it seems there's more to this than just a simple speeding violation. We have to take this seriously, especially if there's a pattern of reckless driving involved. At that moment, the courtroom door creaked open, and a woman walked in. She had an air of confidence about her, and everyone's eyes shifted to her as she made her way to the front. It was clear from her sharp expression that she wasn't just a random bystander. She introduced herself as Mr. Thompson's ex-wife, the girl's mother. I've been hearing about this case, she said, addressing the judge. And if you're looking for more context, I think I have some information you might want to know. Mr. Thompson's face drained of color. It was as if his worst nightmare had just walked through the door. His ex-wife, someone who had no reason to defend him, had shown up at the worst possible time. The judge allowed her to speak, and what she said next deepened the plot even further. For years I've been worried about my daughter's safety when she's with her father, she explained. I've tried to talk to him about his driving habits, but he never takes it seriously. And I know it's not just speeding. He's been pulled over more times than I can count. Reckless driving, using his phone while driving. It's all been part of the pattern for a long time. The tension in the room grew even thicker. Now it wasn't just Mr. Thompson's daughter speaking out against him. It was his ex-wife, too. The judge's face grew stern, as if he was starting to see a much bigger issue unfolding in front of him. Mr. Thompson stood there, visibly panicking, trying to defend himself. Your Honor, I've never put anyone in danger. This is all being blown out of proportion. I drive like everyone else, just a bit faster sometimes. My daughter, she's just upset, and my ex, well, she's never liked how I do things. But the damage was already done. The courtroom wasn't just seeing a man caught for speeding anymore. They were beginning to see a pattern of risky behavior. The people sitting in the back began whispering among themselves, speculating about what might happen next. Some glanced at Mr. Thompson with pity, while others gave him judgmental looks, wondering if he had really been as careless as his daughter and ex-wife claimed. The judge didn't seem swayed by Mr. Thompson's excuses. He leaned forward, tapping his fingers on the desk in thought. This is a serious matter, Mr. Thompson. It's not just about speeding. It's about the safety of your passengers, especially your daughter. This court isn't going to take these accusations lightly. Mr. Thompson looked around the room, realizing that the situation was slipping further and further out of his control. His daughter sat quietly now, staring at her shoes, while his ex-wife stood firm, clearly feeling justified in coming forward. The judge wasn't done yet, though. I think we need to dig a little deeper into this, he said, his voice calm, but decisive. I'm going to request a full driving record review, and perhaps even bring in witnesses. If there's any truth to these claims, we'll find out. But for now, this isn't just a simple traffic fine. The courtroom held its breath, waiting for the final verdict of this hearing. Mr. Thompson's fate seemed to hang in the balance. with the possibility of much more severe consequences than just a fine looming over him. And as the judge ordered a short recess, leaving the entire room buzzing with tension, one thing was clear. This was no longer about a minor speeding ticket. The truth was unraveling, and nobody knew what would happen next. Would Mr. Thompson face harsher penalties? Would more secrets about his reckless behavior come to light? The suspense hung heavy in the air, leaving everyone eager for what the next chapter of this courtroom drama would reveal. As the courtroom resumed, after the short recess, the tension was palpable. Mr. Thompson had spent the break pacing back and forth, clearly worried about what might happen next. His daughter still sat quietly, her gaze never leaving the floor, while his ex-wife stood off to the side, arms crossed, waiting for the next development. The judge returned, calm and composed, but his demeanor hinted that things were about to get serious. He opened the file with Mr. Thompson's driving record, scanning it carefully. The courtroom waited in silence, every eye fixed on the judge. When he finally looked up, the weight of his expression spoke volumes. "Mr. Thompson," the judge began, "it appears your driving record confirms what we've been hearing today. Multiple speeding tickets, warnings for distracted driving, and several other violations." A murmur rippled through the room as people realized just how deep the issue went. Mr. Thompson's face fell. He knew there was no talking his way out of this now. His daughter looked up, her expression a mix of relief and sadness, as if she had hoped things wouldn't come to this, but also knew it was necessary. The judge continued, "This is not just about a speeding ticket anymore. You have a pattern of behavior that puts not only your safety at risk, but more importantly, your daughter's safety. As a parent, your responsibility is to protect her, and it's clear that you've neglected that duty." Mr. Thompson opened his mouth to speak, but the judge held up a hand to stop him. "No more excuses. We're going to handle this the right way. I'm suspending your license effective immediately, and you will be required to attend a safe driving course before you can reapply. Additionally, you will face a significant fine for your repeated offenses." The room was silent, the gravity of the situation sinking in. But the judge wasn't done. He turned to Mr. Thompson's daughter and spoke in a softer, more compassionate tone. "Young lady, I want to commend you for your honesty today. It takes a lot of courage to speak out, especially when it involves someone you care about. Your safety is the priority here, and I hope this will be a turning point for your father." The girl nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and sadness. She hadn't wanted to betray her dad, but she had also known that something needed to change before it was too late. Mr. Thompson, meanwhile, stood there clearly defeated. His eyes were on his daughter, and it was obvious that this moment had shaken him to the core. As the judge prepared to wrap things up, Mr. Thompson spoke, his voice low and sincere. "Your Honor, I've made mistakes. I see that now. I didn't realize how much I was putting my daughter at risk. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." The judge nodded, his expression softening slightly. "It's never too late to change, Mr. Thompson. What matters now is that you take responsibility and make sure your actions moving forward reflect the care and safety your daughter deserves." With that, the hearing came to a close. Mr. Thompson's fate had been sealed, but more importantly, the lessons he had learned would stay with him long after this day. As he left the courtroom with his daughter and ex-wife, the weight of what had happened hung between them. But there was also a sense of hope. Maybe this was the wake-up call Mr. Thompson needed to turn things around, not just as a driver, but as a father. The audience, who had watched the drama unfold with bated breath, left the courtroom with plenty to think about. It wasn't just about speeding tickets or fines. It was about responsibility, about the impact of one's actions on others, especially loved ones. The story had taken many unexpected turns, but in the end, it was a reminder that sometimes we need to be held accountable to change for the better, and that's what happened here today. Mr. Thompson learned that the road isn't just about getting from one place to another. It's about making sure those you care about get there safely. And that, more than anything, was the lesson that left everyone in that courtroom thinking twice about the choices they make behind the wheel.